Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ainley, and with me as always is Tom Shellcross.
You know, I always feel awkward doing it with you staring at me. It's actually more awkward staring at you. It's more awkward watching the other guy do it, I feel.
I don't think I've made that consistent of eye contact with a man for that long, ever.
We got to shorten our intro. Man, all right. Our listeners out there, you've heard us a few times. We've been trying to do more live episodes. And this was a good example of it. So we appreciate John Warren for having us out there.
Man, I love John Warren, and I love what he's done over in the West Suburbs. So now he's part of WSBOA. That's technically where we were at for this episode. But he started this like long before. He wanted to get people together in the Western Suburbs, in Berwyn, Cicero, Brookfield, all that together and network. And he did that on his own. And ultimately, MBOA said, hey, why don't you guys join us and represent us? Like, what a great story that is. And he did everything he had to do, and now they sit underneath that arm.
Yeah, him and Vicky have done a great job just getting that off the ground and strengthening the NBOA. So I think we take some credit for that, because I remember when Glasser actually was saying, like, hey, should we let these guys in? He said, well, he's been on the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast 5 times, so he's legit.
Yep, that was his resume.
We were a credential for him.
Yep.
I know John was episode 9. I remember that because we said it at the show, and he's been on 4 or 5 other times since then. And he's also provided a bunch of referrals for us as well.
I love John Warren also. I keep saying I love him, but man, the guy's great. Like, I watched him when he used to work with you over at Bree, just as he started as a broker, and how he's came up and just how he's became himself. He's done so much. He's done more than most people ever will do. And he's done it in such a short time. And today we're going to break down everything he did and some of his regrets as well too.
Very open and talking about those, very humble as well, which makes for a great guest. So we have a lot of value in this episode from the live. So I'm not even going to let you do a housing provider table. Let's just jump right into this thing.
All right, I'm canceled.
All right, Mark's canceled. Let's do this.
John, this is your 6th episode. Did I get that right? I think I got it right. 6th episode.
6th episode?
Yeah, but you haven't been on there since episode 198, it's been a couple years. So I'm excited to be here back with you. And we're excited to kick this off. We're going to talk some personal stuff here. I want him to get vulnerable in front of all you guys. You're his crew, his posse.
We are going to embarrass you.
Yeah. So we do want to.
Essentially, they're trying to embarrass me. I get it.
All right, this is where we're going to start. How long have you been doing this? How many years?
I bought my first building in 2015.
All right.
Just under 10 years.
All right, 10 years. What's your biggest regret?
This was a tough one. My biggest regret is not starting entrepreneurship and investing earlier in life. I wish that I had done something entrepreneurial when I was younger instead of a lot of the jobs that I had. And I wish that I'd figured out how to invest earlier. It took me about 5 years to kind of figure out from the start to buying my first property, because I didn't know the right people. This was not before Bigger Pockets and the internet, connecting everybody with investing, but I was not aware of it. So I was still reading books from the public library, which were missing some pretty essential parts of how to make the jump, shall we say. Yeah.
There had to have been like a building or two that stick out in your mind that you did not get. Like, what's the one that got away?
There were a lot of them. So I was shopping for homes in 2011, and everything was too expensive. We were looking in Brookfield and Berwyn primarily, and we would look at like a 4-unit. I remember looking here in the north part of Berwyn at a 4-unit that was like $210,000.
This isn't worth more than $195.
Yeah, and I remember like it smelled really bad, kind of like smoky, and like it was kind of beat up, the units. And I was like, man, this is terrible. Like, why would anybody want this? So yeah, I missed out on a lot of those really, really inexpensive, very good quality buildings that would have been awesome.
All right, for the listeners that don't know you, 10 years into this, give us kind of a level set of where you're at today. How many doors?
Yeah, sure.
You got a brokerage. Just kind of give us a quick overview.
Yeah, so I own Forte Properties. I used to be with Tom a long time ago over at Second City Real Estate. We were buddies with Bree. I started Forte Properties to do the management side of the business for all the stuff that we were buying. We currently have 168 doors between the different partnerships and some of the things that I own myself. So it's grown over the 10 years from 4 to 168. Of course, to be realistic, it's not all my equity. So I have some of that equity, but not all of it. And I also have been in real estate sales for 10 years too. So I run a team. We sell a lot of 1 to 4 unit buildings, houses, condos, 2 units, 3 units, things like that.
You took the lead in all these partnerships and said, hey, I want to manage these. Talk to us about kind of the path you've taken. First off, why would you do that? It's coming from managing myself. I know it's a thankless job, and your partners probably do not appreciate what you do on a daily basis. So kind of why did you take that route, and how have you modified that over the years?
Well, if you have no money, you have to do something in the whole scheme of things. So I think early on, managing the buildings was something some of my early partnerships did kind of as a group. We sort of self-managed it together, which worked out okay. And everybody would just take different roles. I always tended to be the on-the-ground guy. I was a music teacher and had a lot of flexibility, so I could like run around, and I was painting cabinets and stuff like that, doing the unit turns hands-on. And then over time, as we've kind of become more professional, the value that I bring is not so much my ability to paint the cabinets, it's the fact that we have a GC license, we can pull our own permits, we can do the management professionally. So, but I still am never in the partnerships, the money guy. I'm always the bootstrap guy, is kind of what I figured out my role was going to be. So finding the right partner was the big thing, right?
We have a lot of people probably in this room and listening that they've house hacked, right? And they're probably looking, I got a buddy with money and, let's take down that 10-unit building. You don't have to go too much in the weeds, but can you give us a high level of how you've structured one of these deals? I think that'd be very helpful if we get tactical for a second.
It's so simple. One of my early partnerships gave me the whole formula, and I've just done the same thing because I'm not super smart. So I would bring 1/3 of the money, the other partner would bring 2/3 of the money, and we'd be 50-50 partners. And so we would pay that partner that had more money extended back, either through cash flow, refinance, or sale. So I would make no money until that person was paid back. And that includes no management fees, no fees of any type. So that kind of protected the money partner in the relationship, but also gave me the chance to earn equity, which I think is awesome.
Okay, so let's use an example. Let's say you need $200K to get a deal done between just the down payment, whatever rehab you have planned, right? He or she is going to put in roughly $130K, whatever 2/3 is.
Right.
You're putting in 70. 4 years later, you go to refi, and there's $100K to get returned. Does that partner get all of that money first, or is it proportionally?
Proportional until we're 50-50 partners is the way we've structured them.
Got it.
So if I brought 66 grand, once that partner and I were even at 66 grand, then we could take distributions, further cash out.
So once their number, so they're first once their number got to your number.
Right.
Okay.
What I liked about that is it gave me a chance as the bootstrapping guy to figure out, and still does, I'm still using this arrangement, gives me a chance to figure out how to earn the equity that I didn't have. And it protects the capital partner, because anybody that has money could just put their money in a CD, they could be a limited partner in syndication, do nothing, right? Why would they want to go sign loan documents, deal with the whole process? But it protects them. So they have the opportunity to have ownership and to have that direct real estate ownership, but still be protected. So was given to me by a partner early on, that whole formula, and I just kept doing it.
What's the downside to that? And I always like to be careful. You're like, oh, it's perfect. What's the downside, or what's the risk, or if any, for people listening?
That's a great question. Fortunately, rates never go up, right? They're always 3.5%. So if you may, so one deal we did in 2022 was a very, very good purchase. We bought a portfolio in this area, and it was a great buy. We used a bridge loan, and when we bought, the bridge loan was 8.5%, and then it went to 11.25%, and we still couldn't get off the bridge. And then we shifted to a local bank and got it down to 9.5%, and still couldn't get off the bridge. And then we finally went to get off the bridge, but we couldn't get a full cash out. So that deal we've made nothing on, and I will make nothing on the deal for a long time, probably 3 or 4 or 5 more years. My partner is back whole now. We're 50-50 in it, but it's a good purchase with a lot of equity and no cash flow yet, and no management fees, no anything. So you just got to continue operating that deal until you get to the other side of the bridge. That's the big risk.
So a lot of equity. For someone that doesn't have equity, that still sounds good, right? But paint us a picture kind of why having that type of equity in a property is good versus trying to find a way out of it because there's no cash flow at this point, or for a long time.
I think that everybody that's investing right now has to kind of come back to fundamentals and understand it's a long-term thing. There is no I buy a building and quit my job tomorrow type of deal these days. I know, Mark, you started back when it was totally different, back when it was wild, right? Before the crash and then after the crash when it was the garage sale. But for me, that equity is something where I can see the value in holding these buildings, maintaining them, running them well, even though I essentially need to work for free for a while, for years. And that's okay, because I never would have had the means to acquire those buildings in the first place. So 5 years from now, John will be really happy that we did these deals, or 10 years from now. But still not fun not making any money working on stuff in the meantime.
In 2006, I actually had the strategy at one point of buying a property in like January and just getting to the next January because I knew I'd make 30, 40 grand. But it was great, and I could control my destiny too, because all I had to do was find some guy that had a pulse and set up the structure for him, and he'll buy it. He'll be the next person to buy it. Like it was nothing fraudulent. It was just so easy to put deals together, and like that was like your buy and hold strategy. So I was upside down on rent for $300 a month, but if you do the math, if I just held it out for long enough, obviously a lot of people got burned, and that's ultimately what led to it. But it's just crazy to think about. Like I thought that was a good idea.
Follow us from other great investing advice, straight up Chicago.
Yep. Follow us.
But it was a really good idea for a couple of years.
Yeah. Everything's a good idea until it's not.
Exactly.
So most of your stuff, it's in this area here.
Yeah.
Are you? Is this where you're gonna stay? I know you ventured up by me. You knocked on my door a little bit here.
A little bit.
Where are you? You're at 168. What does it look like moving forward? Are you? More of the same.
Hopefully, more focused on the same for the next 3 to 5 years. I think that managing more doors is not necessarily easy if they're spread out, because then you become spread out. And so, if we're able to acquire more in this area, it just continues to give us efficiencies and economies of scale. So I think the goal is to stay in this area.
Yep.
I would never say never to a different area, but trying to leave the north side to you.
To do that, though, what are you going to have to do different in the next couple of years than maybe you've done the last 5 years to be able to really focus in and stay here and find the deals?
It's the same problem everybody's having, which is deal flow is lower than it used to be. And so even me being in the industry and constantly looking, there's just not nearly as much to look at. And then having this partnership structure where you have access to capital, but no deals really stinks, because you could do as many deals as you could find and you can't find any. Or if you find them and they don't pencil, you have to be disciplined and pass. So we've passed on a lot of stuff in the last 2 years. We only bought one 6-unit in 2023, and then I bought a 12-unit last year on my own. So that's all we've done the last 2 years. For those who know me, that feels pretty boring. 2020 through 2022 was go-go time. It was great.
In hindsight, for all the ones you just said you passed on, were there a handful of them that you're like now like kick yourself in the butt, like, or is it truly?
So far, I'm glad I passed on. There was one that I had under contract last year that I am glad that I passed on. I might be sad someday, but the deal was slim enough that I felt like where I was at in life, it didn't make sense, but probably for somebody else it would, to put the time in. So yeah, I guess there was maybe one that got by that a small tear is going down my cheek. But I mean, I think you've probably been down this road too. Like both of you guys have passed on deals, and it's hard because sometimes you're like, I could probably see how that could work, but if you stay disciplined, you can also see how it would not work. And I think if you do a bad deal, it takes away your focus and capital from doing another good deal that will come up. So that's the hard part.
What's always hurt me is when you see it, you pass on a deal, or maybe the highest and best you go highest on, but you see it close for like $6,000 more,
it's painful.
or 1% more, whatever. Like you put
Yes.
in, it's like, damn, that's literally a
painful.
1 unit, one year of rent.
But going back to like the most dangerous man at the table is the guy with a loaded gun, meaning a ton of money and ambition. And everyone in this room is ambitious. And when you get into those seasons where you have capital lined up, whether it's yours or investor, like that's a dangerous spot. We talk about all the time. Your best deal or your worst deal is usually right after the best deal, right after you killed it, right after you just got all your money back and you're feeling great. Like that's when like that's where discipline comes in, because like I've been there where you're like I can make this work. I'm a smart guy. Like no, like you need to. Someone's got to slap you.
Yeah, and I think talking about bad deals, like you asked what could go wrong. I mean, we didn't do a bad deal in 2022. We structured the deal wrong for the upcoming interest rate increase, and that in hindsight, we were moving fast. We were growing. We had set goals to grow and buy, and hard money was really easy to close with. We got a great lender that was super comfortable, and what could go wrong, right? We just done a deal where we had like an 8% bridge loan and we went to an agency loan. We did a big cash out. We were in good shape. So yeah, I think it's.
Well, on that one you're referencing though,
Yeah.
is there any, what, outside of just not doing the deal, how is there a way you could have structured it differently with the debt and the bridge and all that? Like,
Yeah.
Like how would you have done that differently?
I think that, like I said, we were moving quickly, and hard money is relatively easy to close with. Once you've done a few deals, as I'm sure you guys know, you can close pretty quickly. But if we'd been a little more patient and found maybe like a local bank that had some sort of a bridge to permanent product, that had some sort of an interest rate cap, I would have to explore it. But I'm sure there was a bank that would do a different deal that would have allowed, we would have had to bring more money, would have slowed us down a little bit more. But in the real world, it would have been a lifesaver when the rates went crazy.
So a little more conservative of an approach
Yeah, exactly.
to lending versus
Less money out of pocket was what we were targeting when we did the deal, and that led to a lot of bridge loans that were not fun.
So you recently bought a 12 unit?
Yes.
Talk to me about when was that? Tell us a little details, why you like that property,
Yeah.
and so forth.
It was in Berwyn. My career kind of started in Berwyn. That's a neighborhood I really feel comfortable in. We managed quite a bit there. I was in a 1031 exchange, so I sold my very first property, a 4-unit, which was kind
First
of bittersweet.
one? Oh.
Yeah. And I went through, talked to a lot of people in here actually about whether it was a good idea or not, because, buy and hold, I owned it for 9 years. It was a very good building. A lot of really nice tenants that I inherited that were still there. It was like so comfortable, but ultimately decided the return on equity and my basic business plan, it didn't align. So sold that 4-unit, and that put me in the market for doing a 1031 exchange. If anybody's done a 1031 exchange, it's a little bit nerve-wracking because you have 45 days to identify a property. So
real quick though,
Yeah,
like once you decide mentally you're going to sell it, you're always looking, but talk to us about that process now. It's not like you sold like, all right, I'm going to go set the walk us through, like, I'm going to list this thing, I'm already looking. When do you identify, like, talk us through like the
That's
steps.
the hard part, because I've seen kind of 2 1031 exchange buyers out there, and I'm sure you guys have done this too. Mark, you've brokered before. Some 1031 exchange buyers, they sell and then they start thinking about it about 20 days in, and then it's like, oh no, there's nothing for sale, and they go buy whatever they can find. No, this was very strategic, and I was looking, and I had my eye on this building in particular because I knew that it was an ugly duckling. It was listed, but it was listed in a portfolio of 3 buildings, 2 that were better maintained, and this one had some structural issues that made it a little scarier to a lot of buyers, most buyers. Probably should have been to me too, but that's okay. So I was tracking it the whole way, and so once I got the contract on my 4-unit, I immediately tied up the 12 units, so that way I could control the process. But I was still looking the whole time until it closed. It was still.
Were you nervous? Did you pay a little more than you would have if you didn't have the 1031? Like,
no, because I didn't tell the other side I was doing a 1031.
oh, that's because they take advantage of you then. I feel that they do.
I think in the business, if you tell
paranoid.
the other side that you are a 1031 exchange buyer, it's human nature, whether they're good people or not. If you're a broker or whatever, you hear that, you're like, this is great. They're going to close for sure. We got it.
Did they not know all the way up until like maybe it's pulling title, or like at what point did you have to share it?
Well, when you're the buyer of the 1031 exchange, there's like a form that the other side has to sign. I believe it's like at closing, pretty much.
This guy knows, Lance.
Yeah. So you tell them like once you're good, like your other property's closed, the money is there, and you're like, all right, cool, we're good. So then I think I told the listing agent, hey, like that deal in 2 weeks. Yeah, this is just FYI, it's a 1031, no big deal. The other side doesn't care at that point, but you're kind of safe. You've got your, because the scary thing is if your sale falls through on your property and you have no money, because I didn't have the money, then what? Then you got to figure it out.
That's a huge housing provider tip right there. Like, don't tell anybody about that's great.
Unless they're like your agent and they're in your corner, or your attorney that's like in your corner, or your lender or somebody that like is on your team, so to speak, but don't let the other side know, I guess, is my thought process.
Well, because when things start, maybe you disagree, but when things start coming up, it's like, he's got it. Now he's kind of locked in. I'm sure he's not going to let the deal down over $5,000, and then you get what you want.
I don't disagree, but I'll play devil's advocate of if you disclose up front, like it just helps. If everyone's on the same page and the goal is to get it closed, it'll just help get it closed. Like I'll take the opposite of this. Lance's deal with Womack, like everyone knew what was going on, everyone knew the deadlines, and it made the transaction smooth. Anytime something got rough, like everyone got on the same page to get it to the finish line. Everyone knew the sense of urgency.
Yeah, but you guys all had the same group of people that
That's
like,
true.
you
There's
guys
off market, we all knew
it was
each
all
other.
friends. Like you guys all were like friends. Like so, but it's like the other thing. Like how many people? It's when you hear like a property like they're getting divorced. Like oh, I got this one. Like
Yeah.
it's a similar kind of like the sharks
you're-
come out when they smell the blood.
Distressed buyer, almost.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you have to buy. You're
Yeah,
on the
it
time
could be the
clock.
wealthiest two
Distressed
people
buyer.
getting divorced, but you still think I'm going to get a deal.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
So, all right, I want to switch to the brokerage side here. So, it's tough right now to get anything to pencil. If you're house hacking and 7% rate, low money down, numbers don't look great. They definitely don't look like they did 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
You had shared you guys work with a ton of buyers. What someone's coming to you saying, hey, I want a house hack. I don't know. This doesn't cash flow. This isn't hitting my numbers. What does that conversation look like? We're
We're trying to dig deeper into the numbers to see how you can make a deal. I've always believed that you, to some extent, make a deal, you don't buy a deal. Because a spreadsheet doesn't really say how you're going to operate the property. And I think we also have to take the time horizon from 1 year to maybe 5 years to see if something makes sense. So I know when I first got into the business, I would work with a lot of buyers on bigger pockets type folks. And they'd say, hey, I'm moving to Chicago. I want to buy a 3-flat. I might move to California next year or LA. Or, they would just start talking about how they weren't going to be here long term. I think if you're not going to be in the area for a while, probably doesn't make sense right now. But if you do see yourself kind of having roots here and you're close to a break even and you can project out a way to make that into a cash flowing asset, I think it sometimes makes sense to have a period of time where you're negative cash flow, but not very much. So
Now, break even right now for a house hack is that you're not paying, you're living there for free still, and you're just kind of even based on your other rents, or is it if I paid market rent, I'd be break even?
I sort of look at it as if you paid market rent because I don't think the live for
So
free
it's not living
scenarios-
for free. No one's living for free right now. You're saying, unless
not,
you get
not
some,
many people. I wouldn't say no one, but I think not many people are. Yeah.
unless you're living in a really crappy garden.
I think you're moving into neighborhoods that are a little tougher than they used to be, and I think all the agents are saying the same things, right? You're starting to dig into some gnarlier neighborhoods trying to find a deal, which has a whole another layer of risk, like, from property management. It's a scary thing when you're in a tougher neighborhood versus a nicer neighborhood. So, yeah, I mean, we are selling less for sure because I just can't bend my numbers beyond a certain point, nor can I tell somebody, it'll be great. Lose $1,000 a month. It's going to all make sense in the end because it won't. Like, it really, really won't. I don't want to.
It worked 2006. We talked about this already.
Yeah. And the hard part is the appreciation could work. That's the thing that's so tough about it. But about a year ago, we rebuilt our calculator that we give to clients to try to show the different ways you make money instead of just focusing only on cash flow, to be able to look at appreciation, depreciation, all the other, the good things that you have, debt pay down. But ultimately, those are less powerful. You do need some cash flow to, global cash flow at minimum to keep paying your debts. So,
Yeah.
You just built out a new office, or you moved into a new office? Tell us about that.
It was kind of a happy accident. So one of the guys that comes to this meetup had a vacant space. I needed a space because we're fixing our house right now, and we're in an apartment, which is kind of funny. Whole nother story. So
Wait, there's
it
3
kids
kids and a couple dogs,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
right.
No
And one of your
dogs, a
sister
cat-
or one bedrooms,
a
right?
cat, yeah, I wish. So long story short, he had a storefront that was vacant. They'd had a pipe burst, and they just needed somebody to fix it. He wasn't doing much with it, so I said, I'll fix it. And we kind of just worked out a deal where I got a couple months of free rent. I had one of our maintenance guys put it back together, and lo and behold, I had an office. If you ever have that thought, don't do what John did. Think about talking to the city where your office is located, because they actually do want you to get a license, I found out, and pay some more fees. So a good learning lesson there. Just got most of the way done with that and survived that. It wasn't that hard, but it was kind of funny. A nice gentleman came around and goes, hey, it looks like you have an office. Have you done your business license? And I was like, no, but I was hoping to. So yeah, it's been great though. I mean, we've survived this long without a physical location, which is pretty crazy. There's pluses and minuses in learning for us because in a way, not having a physical location management was kind of nice because if you had like an irate tenant or something, they couldn't find you. Now they can. So that's like a whole other thing, but
You just have to have less glass so they can't put a brick through it.
right.
I mean, you have to have a lot of tenants who pay not online, right? You still get a lot of checks, I assume?
Very few. I think we had
Okay, so you
3 or 4 last month.
okay.
Yeah.
I was making an assumption about Cicero and
We
language
had a
barrier
big-
between the two of you.
Yeah, no, we made a big push to get everybody onto AppFolio. So we use AppFolio, and they have the cash pay system that people
So they can go to
pay.
7-Eleven. That's how
Right.
you're getting
Yep.
payments.
And then I would say, even those assumptions about people that are paying in cash less than I think, it's probably only about 25% that pay cash or less, and a lot of them are banked. So there's a lot of chase in this area. So yeah, not that crazy actually.
I guess I was just saying, not having an office and collecting a lot of payments not online is like
Yeah.
a disaster. That's what I was getting at. How are you doing it before? But it
So
sounds like you
when
weren't
there
getting
was
that many.
no office, it was actually better. We had 0 checks. Now we can't say no because they're there. And you're like, well, the check just came through the mail slot. I should probably just deposit this bad boy. But yeah, before they were like, we were using a virtual mailbox that got shut down, like a lot of people's on the north side of Chicago. And so the tenants in this area would see the address and be like, oh, it's kind of a long drive. It's 45 minutes. So they would just be like, how can I pay? And I'm like, hey, here's your cash pay slip. Or you can just pay online for free. So
Yeah. What do you tell your house hackers? Because obviously they're not going to invest in AppFolio at
Right.
8 units or whatever.
I think Inago is the solution a lot of my friends are using right now that I think is pretty cool. I am currently paying my landlord who's here rent on Inago. So I have the tenant experience. It's pretty seamless. Pretty cool actually. So yeah, Inago's great. I think to the best of my knowledge, it's more or less free. The tenant pays like $2 or something to make a payment, and that's how they make their money. And it's pretty good.
I share your story all the time because I think one thing that you've done with the management operation, it's called self-management operation, and still utilizing remote staff. You have people in Mexico, you have people at different places.
Philippines and Mexico.
Philippines
yeah.
and Mexico.
Croatia.
You've been able to leverage those. So I get calls all the time from people that are like, I got like 50, 60, 80 units. I'm like, yeah, we're probably not the right fit for management, but you might consider doing it yourself. And I always use that model. How has that worked out for you? And as far as having remote team members, or why has it worked out for you, or why do you like it, or why don't you like it and you're doing it?
I was so resistant to it, and this guy named Mark Ainley told me I was an idiot and I needed to do it. And then he gave me my first hire, who's still with me, who's a solid guy.
He's still with you?
He is.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So hopefully Sam doesn't find this. You're a good guy, Sam. It's been worked out really well, and it's allowed us to scale. I think that, like anything, we're actually reaching the other side of it now, where we need to kind of have more in person to support the virtual staff, because they're like doing everything they can and they just need to figure out how to get a letter to somebody or whatever. So I think, like you said, if somebody has like a portfolio of 30, 40, 50, 60 units and they're not leveraging the talent globally, it's crazy. We have 2 guys from the Philippines who are awesome. They work like overnights essentially. So I always am like, in our meetings, I'm like, hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because everybody's in different time zones, but it's pretty awesome. And yeah, and my accountant in like Croatia, she's amazing. So it's been awesome. I think that you do need maintenance and boots on the ground though, obviously. So, they can do anything that you can do at a computer, they can do too, just as well.
What are some examples? Like, what are the people in the Philippines and Mexico doing for you?
Taking the endless maintenance calls, like around 600 work orders a month. So I have one poor guy whose main job is to deal with that, which is a thankless job.
600 a month? That's how many work orders you're doing? Or is
It's
that
a lot.
just,
It's a lot.
that's
Yeah.
a lot.
We also run all of our unit turns through it, so that probably inflates
Okay.
it, but still, it's a lot of work orders and building cleanings and recurring work orders. But there's still a couple hundred of those that are leaky pipes and roaches, and my door fell off and the ceiling's collapsing. Or this morning, water's coming out of all the lights in the whole first floor of a building, like all those kind of fun adventures.
Do you make your tenants get renter's insurance?
Yeah, we do. So renters insurance, we're currently using Second Nature, which is like the what do you call it? Resident benefit package. We're mostly just getting the insurance out of them for right now.
Gotcha.
But
I found out something, I think it was in one of our episodes, that when that tenant's fridge goes out and they just bought $400 worth of groceries, that's a renter's insurance claim, not you cutting them $100 back because you feel bad. So
yeah. Tom's question about like what remote staff can do. I mean, really, Tom, you helped me kind of get over the hill on this. Anything accounting definitely could be done anywhere in the world. Maintenance coordinating, like the basics of it, which is just like you have a trusted handy person. You need to get them from A to B and get them a lockbox and call the tenant, harass the tenant. Hey, we got to get in, all that. Lease renewals and leasing, we do a lot of that in the cloud as much as possible. So anything I can get into the cloud. And I think that you have 5 units, you could do that in the cloud still. I think that's one of the things that I've learned is maybe you don't have enough units to get on like a bigger software, but there's a software you can get that's pretty cheap that you should try to be using because it'll save you a ton of time. And then you can outsource that function. So
For people that, a lot of people think hiring remotely or someone in the Philippines, like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? Like, how do you go about finding these people other than Sam?
Yeah, Sam was a godsend from Mark. But after that, my second hire was my accountant, and she was a direct referral for my CPA. So they knew her, and that was awesome because they talk about all the things that I don't like, which is accounting, and they fixed all that together. The Philippines was actually another referral from you. There's a site that I hired. I can't remember what it's called. Online
PH.
is that what it is?
Yeah.
So that was pretty awesome. I think if there's one thing I've learned about hiring remote employees is that they're people and you just have to treat them like a person. There's awesome people in every country. There's terrible employees in every country. So, if you hire a bad person and they're not fitting or a bad fit maybe, move on, get a new person. And you still have to manage and be a good manager. That's the hard part.
You mentioned all those work orders. What's the worst thing that's happened in the last 6 months to a year? Give us the horror stories.
New Year's Day.
Oh, he had it ready. Yeah. This wasn't even a preemptive question. Like that's emotionally triggering, I see.
No, it wasn't that bad, but New Year's Day we had a 100-gallon hot water tank give out in a 22-unit building in the morning. Maintenance was there within a half hour. It still flooded all the units on the first floor with like 2 inches of water. It was clean water, but good luck convincing the tenants that this is clean hot water.
That won't grow mold.
Right, exactly. And we cleaned it up like that fast. We had it cleaned up within 3 hours, but then it was New Year's Day. And if you've ever tried getting a hot water tank, a high efficiency hot water tank at that. So I even have a friend who stocks an extra one that I asked if I could use it, but it's not high efficiency, so it wouldn't work. And we could not use atmospheric. So it took into the second day to get the tank. We shopped for the tank at like 5 different stores. The direct replacement was like a $14,000 or $13,000 tank, and we ended up finding one for 10. And then it took 5 guys to get it in because they were a pain in the neck.
God,
so yeah. So it was an absolute bear of a job. My team worked their tails off and got it done, and I feel like we saved a ton of money doing it right. We did it, but still, it was a pain in the neck. It was still New Year's morning, and people were still really grumpy. They had no hot water. So
I was gonna say, out of 22 tenants, maybe 4 of them were like, "Oh, thank you."
They were all relatively nice about it, but understandably perturbed. They couldn't take a hot shower on New Year's Day or do their dishes or whatever. Yeah, it stunk. And it's funny when you say horror story. I always look at like, what could we have done to mitigate it? Our 24/7 emergency system worked flawlessly. One of my maintenance guys grabbed it on New Year's morning, and was there within a half hour before I saw it. We couldn't have done anything better. It just happens.
That's a good maintenance guy. That's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a keeper.
What's his name?
Yeah. Tom Shellcross.
Yeah.
Made it from the north side that quickly.
Yeah, no. I made it there and I called someone. I'm not doing anything.
All right, so 10 years later, a little longer than it might be, like, if you do something over again, you talked about starting early, but if you're going to take the progression you had, if you could do something over or change something about it, what would you do, or nothing?
It's funny, when we talked about some of the questions that might come up. This one was one of them. And I was thinking about what I would do differently. I feel like with real estate, I tried to do things differently and wasn't able to succeed. So I'm going to take a slightly different track, which is I wish I had done something entrepreneurial earlier in my life. I always wanted to, and there was always a lot of fear around it. So if you're 19, 20, 22, 16, and you think, I want to do a thing, try it. What's the worst that can happen? You'll still be working back at Target or whatever like I did, So I think I've always been entrepreneurial at heart, and I wish I had started earlier.
All right, so your career grew and your family grew too.
Yeah.
What have been some of the bumps in the road of trying to be an entrepreneur where you can't turn it off and growing a family?
That's super hard, right? Because you have to sometimes have a catastrophe going on and realize I get this time with my kid, or my kid needs me right now. They're having an outburst or a problem, or they're dealing with a thing from school. And you're like, I could tend to this emergency. I'm the best person to tackle this emergency and fix this thing. It's costing real money. There's water leaking everywhere, but my kid's freaking out. And that's like a hard place to be. And I think your priorities need to be your kid, because the good news is if you have your systems built, somebody else will grab that. It's going to be okay. The building will still be there tomorrow. If it's not, the insurance will still pay you tomorrow. It's going to be okay. Whereas I think you only get one shot with your kids. So.
All right. So staying on the kid note, how do you think you've raised your kids differently as you're trying to, I've seen them here at meetups with you.
Yeah.
What are you doing differently with them because of your entrepreneurial experience or where you're trying to set them up in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we try to get them involved when we can. I found it a little easier when they were small. As they get older and get into activities, it's like, come with me on this showing or go to your game. Like, it's a little harder to do. But I do try to involve them as much as possible, and I try to throw them into situations like I took my oldest to a closing in 2019 with a partner who's high net worth, and like he got a chance to sit with somebody who's sold a business, for instance, and done really well. Whether that really rubbed off on him, who knows? But like having those kind of opportunities, I think, is really awesome at a young age, and just seeing that all these are just people. All the people that are doing it, they're just people, but exposing them to the opportunities so they know about it.
Yeah, I like that. Cool.
I'm ready to wrap.
Ready to wrap?
Very efficient.
Yeah, we've got nothing else to talk about. You've been on 6 times.
Yeah, you guys already know everything about everything. It's all good.
All right. What's your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this in the last 10 years while others might wish I wish I had 168 units?
Focus. In this area, being really focused on the area and focus on people, having deep relationships. Like Tom asked earlier about my maintenance guy, I've been working with him since like 2017. He was like one of my first maintenance guys. So I've had a lot of the same folks in my life for a long time.
Yep. All right, what's the one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property here in Chicago?
Make sure that it doesn't have too much negative cash flow for too long in 2025. No. But in all seriousness, make sure you have a longer time horizon, maybe 3, 4, 5 years, and think about how impactful the building could be for your financial future over a longer time horizon than just today.
What do you do for fun?
I used to say basketball, but I took up running about 6 months ago, and I went ham on it. So I run about 4 days a week now. I did 24 miles last week, and I am trying to get into the Chicago Marathon, although it's harder than I thought if you don't get in a year early.
Are you on Strava?
I am on Strava.
I gotta find you on Strava.
You can find me on Strava.
Right.
I use Garmin, so if you're a Garmin person, I'm on the Garmin Connect, but it connects to Strava. So,
All right.
and a couple, the people in this room have been inspirational to me in running. So we'll throw Brad's name out there. Brad's on Strava. Every time I run and I feel good, I look at his time and I go, holy cow.
All right, Brad, I'm gonna find you too.
Brad's fast. So yeah, I've really taken up running. Highly recommend it. It feels awesome.
All right, you can't use running for this answer.
Yeah.
Good book, podcast, or self-development activity?
Good book, podcast, or self-development activity?
Not running.
Yeah, not running. I'm going to go with a
Not
book.
this podcast either.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the book, Extreme Ownership, which is Jocko
Willick,
and Willick
right?
and Leif Baden. I should have prepared better for that. You'd think I listened to the podcast. Yeah.
My 13-year-old, he's reading it right now.
Yeah.
I bought it for you when your 14-year-old birthday. I think it was 14 or 15.
Yeah, it's a really good book.
All right.
A lot of good stuff.
Other than yourself, what's a valuable resource for other Chicago real estate investors? Who's a valuable?
Yep. I'm going to throw out a name that, because he could use it right now. He's an agency lender, Luke Erlandson with Walker & Dunlop. Awesome. If you're a commercial investor, you're trying to get an agency loan like Freddie or Fannie, he's awesome. So
Let's divert for a second. When does it make sense to do an agency loan? There's high level. We don't have to go into the weeds here. But
whenever your loan size is around $1 million, which comes faster than people think because it doesn't have to just be one property. You could also have a couple of contiguous properties and you could qualify. And the agency debt, it was really good when the rates were low, but it's still awesome because it's non-recourse and they have a lot more options. Like you could have longer interest-only periods, longer terms. It's really, I think it's advantageous for buy and hold investors a lot earlier than people realize. And more people should be thinking about it.
Yeah, and then the opposite of that, if you're going to be refinancing in 2 years, 4 years, that's when the upfront fees of agency no longer.
Yeah, it's for a permanent loan on a building you want to hold for a long time.
Yeah.
You want to put that building to bed, pull as much cash out as possible, or put on really good permanent debt.
Yep, cool, good stuff. All right, John, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to this room and to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
I'm really easy to find. Our website, forteproperties.com. You can also email me, jwarrenbroker@gmail.com. Pretty easy to find. Yeah, always looking to network with folks.
I'm going to throw it out here too. I'm pretty sure I came up with Forte Properties. We were talking music at
You
dinner.
probably did. You
at
probably
dinner one
did.
night.
Yes.
It's like I said, Sharon, doesn't she play the piano too? And you
Yes.
guys, I was like, yeah.
And if everybody remembers, there was a different name I can't mention that lasted for 10 seconds until I
Cease and
learned
desist.
about trademark. Yes. Yeah.
That's why this came up. We were talking about the
Yes.
cease and desist at dinner, and we're like, all right, we got to figure this out.
I think you may have been
And
instrumental.
then I think we started, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Well, where I failed, and I don't know if you ever heard the back end of the story, because I actually had your wife involved in this.
Oh yeah, we were.
You were involved
yes,
too.
Yeah, your wife was at our event.
I have a good friend who's an attorney. His name is Steve Forte. And I had him all lined up to send you the letter to cease and desist. But I'm like,
After going through the
just
real
as a
cease
joke.
and desist.
I'm like, I am going to get your wife was in on this.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah, she was at our event, so we had her hooked
That
too.
would have been incredible.
And I'm like, man, like part of me just felt like he's gonna fucking drop dead. Because I saw how much stress you went through with the first cease and desist. Like,
Yeah, it was great.
so.
All right, Chicago facts.
All right.
Oh, man.
So who are we playing for? Someone pull where we got. All right, pull me one out. What do we got? We got 138, ends in 138. What's your name? Valeria? All right. All right, so Valeria, if I, myself, or John gets this question right, you'll get a $100 gift card from our today's sponsor, Bebek Das Law, who I think we all used
Yes.
him at one time or the other. So if you're looking for a good attorney,
Yes.
Bebek's awesome. So go
All
ahead.
right, here we go. We're in Oak Park. I have to do an Oak Park question. So Oak Park was first settled in 1835. It later incorporated in 1902 when it separated from, and your options are, River Forest, Cicero, Chicago, Park Forest.
I'm going to say Chicago.
You're wrong.
Am I really?
I'm going to go with
You
Cicero.
voted-
yeah.
Cicero's
I'm gonna go with
correct.
Cicero.
Who knew it? Who knew it?
Yeah.
All right, all right, you get a $100 gift card brought to you by today's guest, Bebek Das. So awesome, man.
We only signed up for 50. That's 50 out of his pocket there. That
Oh.
guy just cost.
That's great. That's awesome.
We'll steal money from attorneys all day.
Yep, we got.
It's like Robin Hood.
Yeah, it's Robin Hood. Yep, that's what I was gonna say. It's rightfully so. It's karma, right? All right. Well, man, John, thanks for coming on. Tom, thanks as always. Listeners, if you guys could help us out, iTunes, Spotify, give us a 5-star review. That's huge for us. If you could take this episode when it comes out or one later on tonight that's old, share it with a friend. That helps us as well too. Thanks for coming on. Sixth time. I
Six
think
times, yeah.
You already got the award though, so you already got the
Yeah.
trophy.
He's
for
got my
5.
7th grade
I'm
basketball
waiting for
trophy.
Tom to run out of trophies, though.
All right, all right.
At some point, you're going to
I was a good grammar school basketball player. We got
Must
tons
have.
of trophies.
Yeah.
John, thank you. Tom, thank you. And listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks all. Woo, nice work.
guys.